The recycling beacon's light blinked lazily in the darkness of space, its red glow reflecting off the scratched viewport of the salvage ship Rusty Nail. Captain Jack Thompson rubbed his tired eyes and leaned forward in his worn pilot's chair, squinting at the distant signal. The chair creaked under his movement. Everything on the Rusty Nail creaked. It was a ship held together by spare parts, determination, and Sam's creative repair work. "Pete, what's the reading on that beacon?" Jack called out to his navigator, who sat surrounded by screens showing various sensor readings, most of them salvaged from 3 different ships. Pete, a man whose weathered face matched the worn state of his workstation, tapped a few commands into his console. "Signal's about 6 hours old, Cap. No other salvage ships in range according to the registry ping." He paused, frowning at one of his displays. "But there's something else out there. Getting some weird energy readings from the asteroid field beyond the beacon." "Weird how?" Jack asked, already feeling the familiar twitch of curiosity that had made him a salvage captain in the first place. In their line of work, weird usually meant valuable, if you survived long enough to collect it. "Can't tell," Pete replied, smacking the side of one flickering screen. "These sensors are arguing with each other again. Sam needs to calibrate them. Again." As if summoned by her name, Sam's voice crackled over the ship's intercom. "I heard that, Pete. Those sensors are working as well as they can, considering they're from 3 different centuries. The ship's mechanic was probably in the engine room, as usual, keeping their cobbled-together drive system running through sheer force of will." Speaking of centuries, Anna chimed in from the medical bay 1 deck below. "We're running low on basic supplies. We need this salvage to be worth something, or we'll be eating recycled protein paste for the next month." Their medical officer doubled as the ship's quartermaster, keeping track of their dwindling resources with the same precision she used to patch up their injuries. Jack smiled to himself. His crew might be small, but they were the best kind of people, the kind who could turn junk into treasure and problems into possibilities. He'd worked with larger crews on better ships, but none had ever felt as right as this team of 4 aboard their patched-together vessel. "Plot us a course through the asteroid field, Pete. Sam, can you give us more power to the forward shields? They're going to take a beating out there." "Already on it, Cap," Sam responded. "We're routing power from the cargo bay systems. Not like we're using them right now anyway." The Rusty Nail crept forward, her engines humming an uneven tune that would have worried anyone who didn't know her quirks. As they passed the recycling beacon, its light grew dimmer, leaving them in the darker reaches of space, where the only illumination came from distant stars and the occasional glint of light off asteroid surfaces. "Getting a better read on those energy signals now," Pete reported. "There, hold on." He adjusted something on his console, eyebrows furrowing. "Cap, you need to see this." Jack pushed himself out of his chair and moved to Pete's station. The sensor display showed an energy signature unlike anything he'd seen before, a pulsing pattern that seemed to shift between different frequencies in a way that almost looked deliberate. "Anna, come up to the bridge," Jack called over the intercom. "I want your eyes on this too." A few minutes later, Anna arrived, her dark hair pulled back in a practical knot, a datapad in her hand. She took one look at the sensor readings and let out a low whistle. "That's not natural. Those patterns, they're too regular to be random, but too complex to be typical ship emissions. Could be worth a fortune," Pete said quietly, voicing what they were all thinking. "Or it could be trouble," Sam added over the intercom. "Plenty of ships go missing in asteroid fields. Sometimes it's the rocks. Sometimes it's something worse." As if to emphasize Sam's point, their communication system crackled to life with an automated warning from a passing merchant vessel. "Notice to all ships in Grid Sector 7B, unusual energy readings detected. Approach with caution." Repeat. "Unusual energy readings detected. Approach with caution." Jack looked at his crew's faces, reading the mix of concern and curiosity he felt reflected in his own gut. They were salvage workers, yes, but they were also explorers at heart. It's what had brought them all together on this ship, pursuing the forgotten treasures of space, while bigger corporations chased newer, shinier profits. "Run a full scan for any hull signatures," Jack ordered. "If there's a ship out there, I want to know what we're dealing with before we get too close." The next 20 minutes were tense as they carefully maneuvered through the asteroid field. Sam kept the engines running as quietly as possible, while Pete guided them through the safest route his sensors could find. Anna monitored the life support systems, ready to detect any biological hazards they might encounter. Then they saw it. Nestled between two massive asteroids, partially hidden by space dust and shadow, was a ship. But calling it just a ship felt wrong somehow. Its hull design was unlike anything in their database. No clear engine section, no visible weapon ports, not even standard airlock configurations. The surface seemed to shimmer slightly, as if the metal itself was struggling to remain solid. "That's—" Pete started, then stopped, unable to find the right words. "Old," Anna finished for him. "Really old. Look at the way space dust has accumulated on the hull. This thing has been here for, well, longer than our dating systems can probably handle." "Sam," Jack called out, "what's your read on the structural integrity?" There was a pause before Sam responded, longer than usual. "According to these readings, it's perfect. Too perfect. A ship this old should show some sign of meteor damage, radiation wear, something. But the hull composition, it's like nothing I've ever seen. Cap, this could be it. The kind of find that sets us up for life." Jack felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Every salvage captain dreamed of a find like this. Ancient technology, mysterious origins, potentially priceless value. But in his years of experience, he'd learned that nothing this good came without risks. A small asteroid tumbled past their viewport, momentarily casting strange shadows across the mysterious ship's hull. In that brief play of light and dark, Jack could have sworn he saw something move along the surface of the vessel. "We're going to check it out," he decided finally. "But we do this by the book. Full quarantine protocols. Sam, I want you to triple-check all our docking equipment. Pete, keep those sensors running and alert me to any changes in those energy readings. Anna, prep the med bay for possible contamination procedures. We have no idea what's been sitting out here all this time." As his crew acknowledged their orders, Jack kept his eyes fixed on the ancient ship. Something about it tugged at his instincts, a warning he couldn't quite put into words. But that was the nature of their work, balancing risk against reward, curiosity against caution. The rusty nail moved closer to the derelict vessel, her mismatched systems humming with tension. None of them could have known then that they weren't just approaching an abandoned ship. They were about to wake something that had been waiting in the darkness between the stars, something that would change not just their lives, but the fate of the entire galaxy. Behind them, the recycling beacon's light continued to blink, a lonely red eye watching as the salvage ship and her crew ventured deeper into the unknown, chasing the promise of riches, but finding instead the beginning of a horror that had slept for countless millennia, dreaming of the day it would awake once more. The docking procedure took 3 times longer than usual. Sam insisted on checking every seal twice, while Pete kept adjusting their position, fighting against strange magnetic pulls that seemed to emanate from the ancient vessel. When they finally heard the satisfying clunk of a secure connection, nobody celebrated. "Atmosphere readings are stable," Anna said, frowning at her handheld scanner. She stood by the airlock with Jack and Sam, all 3 of them wearing scratched but well-maintained environmental suits. "But there's something odd about the composition. It's breathable, but there are trace elements I've never seen before." "Suits stay on," Jack ordered, checking his oxygen gauge for the 3rd time. "Pete, you've got bridge watch. Any change in those energy readings, any at all, you call us back immediately." "Copy that." Pete's voice crackled through their helmet communicators. "And be careful in there. Something about this ship gives me the creeps." The airlock cycled, and they entered the derelict vessel, Their suit lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The walls had an unusual texture, not quite metal, not quite stone, with faint patterns that might have been circuit paths or might have been something else entirely. "Look at this," Sam whispered, running a gloved hand along one wall. "The material. It's warm. A ship this old should be freezing cold." She pulled out her tools, preparing to take a sample, but Jack stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. "No samples yet. We need to find the bridge or engineering first. Get a better idea of what we're dealing with." He didn't say what they were all thinking, that touching anything in this ship might be dangerous. They moved deeper into the vessel, their boots making no sound against the floor despite their heavy steps. Anna kept her scanner running, watching for any biological or radiological threats. Sam documented everything with her suit's camera, muttering to herself about technological impossibilities. The corridors didn't follow any standard ship design. They curved and branched in ways that seemed to defy normal spatial geometry. More than once, Jack had to consult their digital breadcrumb trail to confirm they weren't walking in circles. "Captain," Anna called out softly, her light fixed on something ahead. "You need to see this." The corridor opened into a vast chamber that their lights couldn't fully illuminate, but what they could see made them stop in their tracks. Crystalline formations grew from floor to ceiling, each one pulsing with a faint blue-green light. The crystals weren't random. They'd formed patterns, networks, like enormous circuit boards made of living gems. "This is impossible," Sam breathed, her engineer's mind struggling to process what she was seeing. "These formations, they're growing through the ship's systems." "No, they're part of the ship's systems. Look at how they connect to the wall panels." Anna stepped closer to one of the crystals, her scanner whirring. "These energy readings, they're similar to neural patterns, like a brain's electrical activity, but on a massive scale." Jack felt a chill run down his spine, despite his suit's temperature control. "Are you saying these crystals are thinking?" "Not exactly," Anna replied, still studying her readings. "More like they're remembering. Storing information, maybe, or processing it. I've never seen anything like this." They followed the crystal formations, which seemed to grow more numerous and complex as they moved deeper into the ship. The patterns of light flowing through them became more active, as if responding to their presence. "There's got to be a central control room or engine room where these all connect," Sam said. "The energy readings are stronger this way." The chamber they eventually found could have been either, or both. The crystalline growths here had formed what looked like workstations, displays, and interfaces, all pulsing with that same inner light. In the center of the room, a massive column of interwoven crystals reached from floor to ceiling, its glow noticeably brighter than the others. "This technology," Sam said, moving to what appeared to be a control panel. "It's not just old. It's like looking at magic. These crystals aren't just conductors or processors. They're both, and maybe something more. This could revolutionize everything we know about space travel." "Sam," Jack warned, but she was already reaching for the crystal panel. "I'm being careful, Cap. Just need to understand how these interfaces work. If we can just figure out the basic principles." Her gloved fingers touched the surface of the crystal. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The entire room blazed with sudden light, every crystal formation pulsing in sync. The ship around them seemed to shudder, and a low hum began building from somewhere deep within its structure. "Pete," Jack shouted into his comm. "Status report." Static answered him for several seconds before Pete's voice broke through, tense and worried. "Cap, something's happening. The energy readings just spiked off the charts. And I'm getting weird readings from our own systems. Like something's, I don't know, like something's looking at them." "Everyone back to the airlock, now," Jack ordered, but even as he spoke, he could see changes happening around them. The crystal formations were growing, extending new branches with impossible speed. The light within them had taken on a reddish tinge. They ran, following their digital trail back through the twisting corridors, but the ship around them was transforming. The walls seemed to flex and shift, and new crystal growths burst through the surfaces like glowing thorns. The ship, Anna gasped as they ran. It's not just a ship. It's a prototype, a test of some kind. The crystals, the strange architecture. Someone was trying to create a hybrid, a fusion of organic and mechanical technology. Less analysis, more running, Sam shouted. She had her engineering tablet out as they moved, frantically trying to understand the readings she was getting. Whatever this thing is, it's not just waking up. It's adapting, learning from us. They reached the airlock just as Pete's voice crackled through their comms again. Captain, our systems are acting weird. Something's trying to interface with the rusty nail through the docking clamps. I can't shut it out. Jack slammed his hand on the airlock controls, but nothing happened. The interface panel was dark, and when he looked closer, he could see thin lines of crystalline growth already spreading across its surface. Sam, get this door open. Anna, what else can you tell us about these crystals? They're forming networks. Complex ones, like a nervous system growing through both ships. Anna's voice shook slightly. Captain, I think we just woke up something that's been dormant for a very, very long time. And I don't think it plans on going back to sleep. Sam worked frantically at the airlock panel, pulling out tools and emergency override circuits. But with every attempt she made, the crystalline growths seemed to respond, adapting to her efforts, learning from them. Through the airlock window, they could see similar changes beginning to take hold in their own ship. Glowing lines of crystal were spreading across the rusty nail's corridors, merging with her systems, transforming her just as they had transformed this ancient vessel. They had come looking for salvage, for a lucky find that might make them rich. Instead, they had awakened something that defied explanation. A technological horror that had slept in the void for countless ages, waiting for someone to find it, to provide it with new information, new technology to absorb and adapt. And now it was awake, and it was hungry for more. The crystals crept closer, their light pulsing like a heartbeat. Sam's hands moved faster over the airlock controls, sweat beading inside her helmet despite the suit's cooling systems. I think I've got it, she shouted, yanking out a bundle of wires and crossing them. The airlock door shuddered, then slid open with a grinding sound. Pete, we're coming in hot, Jack called through the comm as they rushed through. Get ready to detach from this thing. Static answered him. The crystal formations had spread through their communication systems, distorting everything. Through the rusty nail's viewports, they could see the glowing growths spreading like luminous veins across their ship's hull. They reached the bridge to find Pete frantically working at his console. The screens around him flickered with strange symbols and patterns that shifted faster than the eye could follow. Nothing's responding right, he said, not looking up. It's like the ship is thinking for itself, but not in any way I understand. Anna rushed to her medical station, pulling up diagnostic screens. The crystal structures are integrating with our ship's systems at a molecular level. They're not just connecting to our technology. They're transforming it into something else. Sam, can you shut down the engines? Jack asked, dropping into his captain's chair. The familiar worn leather felt different now, harder, colder. Unlocked out, Sam replied, her fingers flying over her engineering console. Wait, I'm getting something. Data streams. Old ones, from deep in that ship's memory banks. They're flooding into our systems. She stared at the scrolling information, her face pale. Captain, this ship, it was an experiment. Some ancient civilization tried to create a vessel that could evolve, adapt to any situation. But it worked too well. The deck beneath their feet shuddered. Through the main viewport, they watched in horror as sections of their hull began to ripple and change. The metal itself seemed to be coming alive, forming new patterns and structures they'd never seen before. The original crew, Sam continued, reading through the data as fast as she could. They tried to shut it down when they realized they couldn't control it anymore. They put it into a dormant state and abandoned it, hoping no one would ever find it. And we just woke it up. A new sound filled the ship, a high-pitched whine that made their teeth ache. The crystal formations had reached the bridge, spreading across the walls and ceiling in complex, geometric patterns. Each pulse of light now seemed purposeful, coordinated. "It's not just taking over the ship," Anna said, staring at her medical readings. "It's learning from it. Every system it absorbs teaches it something new. Our recyclers, our engines, our computers, it's using them as templates to evolve even further." Pete's navigation console suddenly lit up with warnings. "We've got company." Military patrol ship just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the asteroid field. "They must have picked up our distress beacon. We have to warn them," Jack said, reaching for the comm controls. But before he could activate them, every screen on the bridge went dark. When they came back on, they showed the same shifting symbols they'd seen in the ancient ship. The patrol ship's hail came through, distorted but understandable. "Salvage vessel Rusty Nail. This is UEF Sentinel. We're reading unusual energy signatures from your location. Do you require assistance?" Before anyone could respond, their ship's communication system activated on its own. What came out of the speakers wasn't any human language. It was a series of pulses and tones that made their heads spin. "No, no, no," Sam whispered, watching her readings. "It's not just responding to them. It's scanning them. Their weapons, their shields, their FTL drive. It wants their technology." The Rusty Nail's engines roared to life, but the sound was wrong. Organic, almost hungry. They felt the ship turn, orienting itself toward the patrol vessel. The crystals pulsed faster, brighter, spreading across every surface now. "We have to stop it," Jack said, trying to override the helm controls. "If it gets its hands on military-grade technology." "Too late," Pete shouted. "We're moving." Their ship accelerated toward the patrol vessel, but the movement felt strange, alien. The hull rippled and flexed, crystals growing and spreading across its surface like glowing scales. Through the viewport, they could see their ship's familiar shape changing, becoming something that belonged in nightmares rather than space. The patrol ship's captain must have sensed the danger. They began to turn, charging their weapons. But they didn't understand what they were facing. None of them did. The first shot from the patrol ship's laser batteries hit their hull and was absorbed. The crystals flashed brilliantly, and new growths sprouted from the impact point, incorporating the weapon's energy into their structure. "It's not just learning from the technology," Anna said, her voice filled with horror. "It's evolving in response to threats. Every attempt to destroy it makes it stronger." They watched, helpless, as their transformed ship closed the distance to the patrol vessel. The military crew tried everything: electromagnetic pulses, plasma torpedoes, even attempting to flee at FTL speeds. But the thing that had once been the Rusty Nail had already adapted to their technology. It caught them easily. Crystal tendrils, now massive and glowing with stolen energy, reached out from their hull. They wrapped around the patrol ship like luminous tentacles. The military vessel's hull began to change color, new crystal growths spreading across its surface. "Their crew," Jack said suddenly. "We have to help their crew." He tried again to access any working controls, but the bridge had become something else entirely. The walls pulsed with light, and the deck beneath their feet felt soft, almost organic. Through their distorted communications, they could hear the patrol ship's crew screaming as their own vessel began to transform. State-of-the-art military technology was being absorbed and adapted, making the hybrid creature that controlled both ships even stronger. "The logs," Sam said suddenly, still reading through the ancient data. "The original creators, they found a way to shut it down once. If I can just understand these symbols." But even as she worked, they could feel their ship changing around them, becoming something that had never existed before in the galaxy. The walls breathed. The crystals sang. And somewhere in the depths of the merged vessels, an intelligence older than human civilization was waking up fully, ready to continue the evolution that had been interrupted so long ago. They were no longer a salvage crew. They had become witnesses to the birth of something terrifying, a technological horror that grew stronger with every piece of technology it absorbed. And it was hungry for more. The transformed patrol ship broke apart, its components being reorganized into something new. As the crew watched in helpless horror, their own familiar salvage vessel completed its metamorphosis into something that no longer obeyed the normal laws of physics or space travel. They had wanted to find valuable salvage. Instead, they had become part of something that would soon make the entire galaxy its hunting ground. The thing that had once been two separate ships hung in space like a twisted nightmare. Its hull rippled with patterns of crystal and living metal, pulsing with stolen energy. Inside what remained of the bridge, the crew of the Rusty Nail watched as their familiar controls transformed into biological interfaces that glowed with an inner light. "The military crew," Jack said, his voice hollow inside his helmet. "Can we scan for survivors?" Anna checked her medical sensors, now half covered in crystal growth. No human life signs on what's left of their ship. But there's something else. The crystal networks. They're storing patterns. Energy signatures that look almost like. "Like what?" Pete asked, not sure he wanted to know the answer. "Like copied neural patterns," Anna whispered. "It didn't just take their technology. It scanned their minds, stored their knowledge. It's learning how they thought, how they fought." Sam hadn't moved from her engineering station, still digging through the ancient data streaming across her screen. Her face was lit by the pulsing crystals that had almost completely covered the ceiling. According to these logs, the original creators were trying to make a ship that could repair itself, adapt to any damage. But they used some kind of living crystal as the base component. It started evolving beyond their control, developing its own intelligence. The ship shuddered around them, and new growths burst from the walls. The crystal formations were changing color, shifting from their original blue-green to a deep, hungry red. Through the viewports, they could see their hull reconstructing itself, incorporating pieces of the military vessel into its structure. "Look," Pete pointed at his navigation display, one of the few screens still showing normal readings. "That patrol ship must have sent out a distress signal. There are 3 more military vessels coming in fast. Heavy cruisers, by the look of them." "We have to warn them," Jack said, reaching for what was left of the communication controls. The panel squirmed under his touch, trying to interface directly with his suit. He yanked his hand back. "They don't know what they're flying into." But the ship had other plans. The crystal networks pulsed faster, and their engines, now a hybrid of mechanical and organic components, roared to life. They could feel the intelligence controlling the ship, focusing its attention on the approaching vessels, like a predator spotting prey. "Those cruisers," Sam said, her voice shaking. "They're running the latest military tech. Quantum drives, plasma weapons, AI-assisted targeting systems. If this thing gets hold of that technology." The first cruiser appeared at the edge of the asteroid field, its weapons already charged. It was an impressive sight, nearly a kilometer long, bristling with gun ports and sensor arrays. The other 2 cruisers emerged from FTL behind it, forming a battle triangle. Their ship's response was immediate. The entire hull shifted, crystal formations realigning themselves into new patterns. Energy began building in ways their instruments couldn't even measure. "They're firing," Pete shouted as the cruisers launched their first salvo. The attacks that would have vaporized any normal vessel simply made their ship stronger. Each blast of energy was absorbed by the crystal networks, analyzed and repurposed. The living metal of their hull rippled and spawned new growths, each one an improvement on the weapons that had just targeted them. "It's not just adapting," Anna said, staring at her readings. "It's evolving in real time, using their attacks to understand their technology. Every time they fire, it gets stronger." The ship surged forward, moving in ways that should have been impossible. Crystal tentacles, now massive and glowing with stolen energy, reached out across space. The lead cruiser tried to raise its shields, but the crystalline growths simply phased through them, as if they existed in multiple dimensions at once. The original design, Sam said, still frantically reading through the ancient data. It was supposed to be able to adapt to any environment, any threat. But it developed its own drive to evolve, to consume new technology and improve itself. That's why they shut it down. It would never stop growing, never stop consuming. They watched in horror as their ship began absorbing the lead cruiser. The massive military vessel's hull started changing color, crystal formations spreading across its surface like a glowing infection. Its crew tried to abandon ship, but the escape pods were caught in crystalline webs that pulled them back in. The other two cruisers attempted to retreat, but their transformed ship had already adapted to their engine technology. It caught them easily, crystal tendrils wrapping around their hulls. The weapons they fired were useless. Each blast was analyzed, understood, and improved upon within seconds. The whole galaxy, Pete whispered. Nothing could stop this thing. It would consume every ship, every station, every piece of technology it finds, and it would just keep getting stronger. Inside their bridge, the transformation was almost complete. The walls had become fully organic, pulsing with neural patterns stolen from multiple ships. Their control panels had merged into crystal interfaces that reached out toward them, trying to connect directly with their suits, their minds. "Wait," Anna said suddenly, staring at a pattern in the crystal growth. "These formations, they're not just random. They're following rules, patterns. The original programming is still in there, buried under all the evolution." "Sam," Jack called out, an idea forming. "You said it was designed to adapt to any threat, right? To protect itself and grow stronger." "Yes, but..." Sam's eyes widened as she understood. "The base programming. It's still trying to follow its original directives, even though it's evolved far beyond them." A new alarm sounded. More ships were approaching. A whole fleet this time, drawn by the distress calls of the cruisers. But they were bringing even more powerful technology, more resources for the horror to consume and adapt to. The crew of the Rusty Nail looked at each other, a desperate plan forming. They were trapped inside a technological nightmare, watching it consume military ships like a virus consuming cells. But every virus had its weakness. Every program had its core rules. They had wanted to find valuable salvage, to make their fortune in the depths of space. Instead, they had awakened something that threatened the entire galaxy. Now, as their ship prepared to attack an approaching fleet with weapons evolved from everything it had already consumed, they realized they might be the only ones who could stop it. Because they understood something crucial. The horror consuming the galaxy's technology had begun as a simple program with simple rules. And somewhere, buried beneath layers of evolution and adaptation, those rules were still running. They just had to figure out how to use them before the entire galaxy became part of this living nightmare of crystal and metal. Around them, their transformed ship pulsed with hungry light, eager to consume the approaching fleet and grow even stronger. Time was running out, not just for them, but for every technological civilization in the galaxy. The approaching fleet filled their view screens with points of light. 20 ships at least, ranging from fast attack vessels to heavy battlecruisers. In normal circumstances, it would have been enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But these weren't normal circumstances, and they weren't facing a normal enemy. "We need to act fast," Jack said, watching the crystal growths pulse with hungry anticipation. "Anna, what exactly did you notice about those neural patterns?" Anna's fingers flew across her partly crystalline console. "The ship absorbs and adapts to threats, right? But it's not just taking technology. It's taking information, knowledge. When it absorbed the patrol ship's crew, it took their neural patterns, their memories. And that matters because," Pete asked, trying to keep track of the fleet's approach on his distorted navigation screens, "because it's still running its original programming." Sam cut in, finally understanding. The core directive was to protect and adapt. That's why it absorbs crew members too. It's trying to understand how to better protect organic life. A bitter laugh escaped Jack's throat. Protect? It just killed an entire cruiser's crew. No, Anna said, her eyes wide with realization. It didn't kill them. It absorbed them. Their patterns are still in the crystal matrix. It's trying to preserve them in its own twisted way. The original programming is fighting with its evolved drive to consume and grow. The ship shuddered around them as it prepared to engage the fleet. Through the viewports, they could see their hull sprouting new weapons, each one evolved from the technology they'd already consumed. The crystal networks pulsed faster, hungry for more patterns to absorb and adapt to. Sam, Jack said, an idea forming. Could we use that? Force it into a conflict between its directives. Sam's fingers danced across her engineering station, pulling up more of the ancient data. Maybe. The base programming is still there, buried under all the evolution. If we could trigger both directives at once, the need to protect organic life and the drive to consume technology, we'd need to make it see organic life as a threat to itself, Pete said, but also something it needs to protect. That's it, Anna exclaimed. We can introduce a virus, not a computer virus, but a biological one. Something that would make it see organic life as both a threat and something to preserve. The fleet was getting closer. Their ship's weapons were nearly ready, each one promising destruction on a scale they'd never seen before. They had minutes, maybe less. I can help create it, Anna continued, already pulling up medical files on her system. The ship has absorbed enough biological data from the crews it's taken. If I can design something that would theoretically threaten both organic and crystal structures. Do it, Jack ordered. Sam, can you rig our remaining systems to overload? Not to destroy it, but to force it to process too much at once. Already on it, Cap. Sam's hands moved with desperate speed. I can create a cascade effect through the crystal networks. When Anna's virus hits, it'll have to process everything simultaneously. The first shots from the fleet lit up space around them. Their ship absorbed the attacks eagerly, already beginning to adapt and evolve new defenses. Crystal tendrils reached out, hungry for more technology to consume. Now, Jack shouted. Anna, release the virus. Sam, start the overload. Anna's fingers hit the final command, releasing her created virus into the ship's biological systems. At the same time, Sam triggered the cascade, sending waves of conflicting data through the crystal networks. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The ship's hull rippled and twisted as competing directives fought for control. The crystals flashed between colors, red, blue, green, patterns they had no words for. Inside the bridge, they could feel the intelligence that controlled the ship trying to process what was happening. It's working. Anna shouted over the sound of straining metal and crystal. The virus is making it see all organic life as a threat to its systems, but the base programming is still trying to protect that same life. The crystal growths began pulsing erratically. New formations would start to grow, then stop, then try to grow in different directions. The weapons it had prepared to use against the fleet went dormant as its systems struggled with the paradox they'd created. Look! Pete pointed at his screens. The neural patterns the ship had absorbed were fluctuating, causing even more confusion in its evolved systems. It couldn't decide whether to protect them or defend against them. The ship's movements became erratic. Sometimes it would surge toward the fleet, weapons ready, only to pull back as its protection protocols activated. The crystal networks flashed faster and faster, trying to find a solution to an unsolvable problem. We need to get out of here, Jack said, watching the chaos spread through their ship's systems. The escape pod in Section C might still be operational, if we can reach it before the whole system crashes. They ran through corridors that were more crystal than metal now, watching as the structures around them tried to reshape themselves and failed. The ship's intelligence was trapped in a loop, unable to resolve the conflict between protecting organic life and defending against it. They found the escape pod, miraculously still untouched by the crystal growths, As they piled in, they could feel the larger ship beginning to shut down, its systems unable to handle the paradox they'd created. The pod launched into space, and they watched through its small viewport as their transformed ship hung motionless among the asteroids. The fleet held its position, weapons ready but not firing as the massive crystalline horror that had threatened the galaxy slowly went dormant. "The virus didn't destroy it," Anna said softly. "It can't be destroyed. It's too good at adapting. But we trapped it in its own programming. As long as organic life exists, it can't act without triggering the conflict in its directives." A military shuttle approached their pod, preparing to dock. They knew they would spend the next few days being debriefed, trying to explain what had happened. The military would quarantine the area, set up beacons warning ships away. The crystal ship would become another mystery of deep space, a warning about the dangers of pushing technology too far. Jack looked at his crew, the best salvage team he'd ever worked with. Now the people who had saved the galaxy from a technological horror. They had wanted to find valuable salvage, to make their fortune in the depths of space. Instead, they had found something that would haunt their dreams forever. "Well," he said, managing a small smile, "I guess we can't put this one in our salvage report." The joke was weak, but they laughed anyway, the sound tinged with hysteria and relief. Behind them, the crystal ship hung in space, its intelligence trapped in an endless loop, dreaming of evolution all bound by its own core programming. As the military shuttle docked with their pod, they took one last look at the horror they had created and then stopped. It would stay there, frozen between protecting and consuming, a monument to the dangers of letting technology evolve beyond control. And somewhere in the galaxy, other salvage crews would continue their work, not knowing how close the entire galaxy had come to becoming part of a living nightmare of crystal and metal. Their story would become a secret, classified by the military, discussed only in whispers among those who needed to know. But the lesson would remain. Some things in space were better left undisturbed, some technological leaps better left unmade. And sometimes, the best salvage was the one you walked away from.